When it comes to racing games, I think we all need to shut up. Most of the criticisms I hear about racing games are that they don't feel realistic enough, or that they're too arcadey. Yawn. From Ridge Racer to Midnight Club, NeedForSpeed, and even Assetto Corsa, let's talk about the real issues in place here. Throughout the years, I've played nearly every release of the NeedForSpeed series, and I've been met with the same disappointment as fans that are wanting the series to go in a direction it was never going to take. Need for Speed is a great example of a game series that does exactly what it wants to do, no questions asked. Now, the execution of these wants is better said than done. I've seen the Need for Speed games turn from a nighttime racing scene to an almost arcade drift challenge. In the latest iteration of the Need for Speed games, there are barely any turns in races that you cannot take without drifting. Horrible drifting, might I add. It's spongy, and there's no real weight behind the cars, and it more so feels like I'm rotating one of those spinning teacup rides. This isn't to say that the game itself isn't enjoyable though. Need for Speed seems to have taken away the option of drifting your car because you're a skilled driver, and turned it more into forcing the player to drift around almost every turn just because of map design. If you try to turn normally or even use the brake, you'll almost certainly hit the barriers. Personally, I don't think this is bad game design. I think that the Need for Speed games do exactly what they set out to do, which is to be a fun video game. And with a little bit of time and imagination, you can really get lost in the world of the Need for Speed games. Seriously. I hear people complain about the handling of the cars and how the physics in the game aren't realistic, and how the cars don't drive like they would in real life. To that, I have two questions for you. 1. Are you not playing a video game? 2. Have you, yourself, personally, as the person you are, driven the 1965 Ford Mustang enough times in your current human form to be able to say that you know how this car is supposed to drive compared to other cars of its class? No? Okay, I thought so. And I think that's where a lot of players get lost in the sauce. Personally, I play games as an escape and as a tool to do whatever I want. And if I just so happen to want to be a street racer, I'm sorry, but Need for Speed is always going to take the cake over Forza any day. The game is designed around speed and looking awesome, and the game will assist you if you have small mess-ups. But I don't think that this detracts from the game itself. Something like Forza's rewind feature, however, does. Rather than assisting you when a piece of geometry clips your vehicle, Forza goes in the complete opposite direction and stops you dead in your tracks, either causing you to embarrassingly get back into the race or use Forza's rewind feature. This lets you reset whenever you want at the press of a button, just by rewinding the game and all of the racers so that you can just get that turn just right. I think it's lazy game design and a terrible way to pull your players out of the adrenaline-filled races to make micro adjustments just because the development team didn't want to test for clipping spots. So, for speed, yeah, I'll take Need for Speed any day. It's literally in the title. Although, while I play the Need for Speed games, I still crave something like Forza. Is that because it has better mechanics? Are the races more fun? Car customization? What exactly is it? Well, for starters, I think that Forza does understand car physics correctly. While I haven't driven almost any of the cars in Forza in real life, I can most certainly say I have driven a car. I know that it's supposed to coast for hundreds of yards when letting off the gas. I know that cars should spin out if oversteering, and these are mechanics in Forza that are not present in the Need for Speed games. But are those things that inherently make the game a better experience, or add a level of polish that, while unnecessary, is nice to see? racing games have seemed to stray away from the classic rubber banding effect, where opponent AIs will adjust their speed to stay with the player so it doesn't feel like you've crushed the competition on lap 1 of 3. And they've chosen to go with a power level system where it doesn't really matter what car you use, as long as it's either the same class or same level as the race itself. You can really use whatever your heart desires. I like, but mostly dislike this system. It gets rid of the annoying need for creating and upgrading a car for every race type and class, but in turn it lets you race supercars and cross-country races. It really is a double-edged sword. Players strive for realism, so they go to Forza, and then Forza gives you missions like this.
It's a tractor, obviously, but with a 5.7-litre Chevy V8 making 500 horsepower.
So you go to something like Assetto Corsa, or even Wreckfest, and you realize, oh wow, racing cars is actually kind of boring, and that's why game developers add mechanics that make it more enjoyable for me as the player to play the game. Why else would Forza be more popular than Assetto Corsa if all people want is realistic racing? Because realistic racing is boring. Look at Wreckfest, a game that was utterly praised when it was launched in early access, touting realistic car physics and a car deformation system that would even make your mom say, wow. You can lose tires and your brakes will stop working in the middle of races if you take enough damage. Well, the game has been fully released 3 years ago, and I bet you didn't know that. Frankly, the game sucks. I don't want to worry about my back left tire's durability after an NPC rubber bands into me. While realistic, it adds something to worry about that the player cannot inherently interact with or fix in any way, therefore creating a frustrating situation that, while it may look cool, is a hindrance for gameplay, which ultimately is why the game failed and Need for Speed has been going strong for nearly 30 years. Now, I'm not exactly sure what to do to make the best racing game, and maybe that could be an entirely separate video, but for now I want to leave you with this. When you think of racing games, and go to argue that they aren't realistic enough, I want you to step back and think maybe that was the design intention.